Hello, everyone. I hope you're doing well. Welcome back to Becoming Bossy. I missed you all, so I wanted to hop on really quickly, and it will be really quickly because I just wanted to focus on this one topic that the LinkedIn organization posted about DEI initiatives. And if you don't know what DEI is, it means diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then there are also ESG initiatives, which are environmental, social, and governance initiatives as well. So before I go in, be sure to like this video, comment below what your thoughts are during the video, and then subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed already. If you're already subscribed, then thank you and welcome back. Also consider joining the channel to get special membership benefits and perks. All right, so on the screen, I have a very, very short, I wouldn't even call this an article. It's more just like a quick synopsis of an interesting topic. So the title is Companies Muted on DEI Initiatives. Companies Muted on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Initiatives. And this is by Kate Chapman. So companies have been muting their public discussion of employee diversity and environmental efforts amid pushback from investors and activists, the Wall Street Journal writes. While talk increased after the police killing or elimination of George Floyd in 2020, executives have been noting subjects such as environmental, social, and governance, and diversity, equity, and inclusion far less frequently on earnings calls. Mentions fell 31%. That's pretty significant, you all, like 31%. That means that companies were not including the words or subjects environmental, social, and governance, or ESG, and diversity, equity, and inclusion 31% less than previously, a year earlier. Wow. According to financial research firm Alpha Sense, the so-called green hushing, interesting. They have so many, I feel like nowadays they have terms for everything, like silent quitting and like quiet promotion. We have so many terms that are trendy and modern for everything that's going on. Hi, welcome. Be sure to tell me hi in the chat. I love to talk to you. So the so-called green hushing, though, doesn't appear to be stopping initiatives such as DEI employee training, the journal notes. Interesting. I mean, I will say, compared to 2020, I have not heard that much about DEI. In fact, I would say I've heard more criticisms about DEI, especially in political news, but I won't get too far into that. But you know what I mean. A lot of these politicians are not for DEI initiatives, so interesting. Very interesting. But what do you all think? Do you think that there's still value in speaking about diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives? I definitely do think so. But I understand that some companies may see that's a risk. And that's probably a risk that they're not wanting to take. So from LinkedIn, I went to the actual Wall Street Journal article. So I'm going to show that. And we might not read all of this. I have not read this prior. So if there's anything outlandish in there, don't blame me. Don't hold it against me. Okay, here we go. Companies quiet diversion and sustainability talk amid culture war boycotts. So I will say, I don't think ESG is going anywhere. I think ESG is here to stay. I think that companies that produce a lot of waste, a lot of pollution, or consume a lot of materials are going to have to report on ESG, whether they like it or not. So here, mentions of social impact initiatives during earnings call have declined, reversing a trend that had picked up after the elimination of George Floyd in 2020. Wow. Companies' mentions of green and social initiatives during earnings calls have sharply fallen off in recent quarters, reversing a more boastful approach taken over the past few years amid intensifying pressure from some investors and conservative activists. I bet. I think companies have to please so many people, the shareholders, investors, the employees. I know they're being pulled in all directions that they probably can't even figure out. Like, oh, what should we prioritize? Should we prioritize this, that, the profits, the social action? Wow. Take electronic signature firm DocuSign, where CFO Cynthia Gaylor in March 2022 said the company achieved carbon neutral status during the year ended that January. Gaylor, who is set to step down as CFO on June 15th at the time, said the company was continuing its efforts to reach net zero emissions no later than 2050. That's pretty impressive. The company's executives haven't mentioned sustainability initiatives, carbon neutral status, or net zero emissions on its earnings calls since. Wow. So they went from highlighting it on this call. What did they say? That was in 2020. Yep. Oh, 2022. That was just in 2022. So in March 2022, they were boasting about achieving carbon neutral status no later than 2050. And now, just a year later, they haven't mentioned sustainability initiatives at all. Wow. A DocuSign spokeswoman did not comment on why executives haven't discussed such topics on recent earnings calls, but said the company continues to make investments in its ESG programs and regularly updates investors and customers on its initiatives. Wow. Finance chiefs and other executives have significantly quieted down in public settings about their environmental and employee diversity efforts, as opposition has mounted from a confluence of interests. Investors who want companies to focus on their operations, not the social good, and conservative groups and political leaders who have seized on corporate support of such causes to rally anti-woke constituents. Oh my gosh. I'm not even going to go that deeply into that. Wow. The easiest thing to do is just to stay out of the conversation and emphasize other facets of business that are going to be perceived as less controversial. Yes, these are very controversial topics. And I definitely see why companies want to stay out of it and aren't mentioning it that much. But I hope that their employees feel supported while working there. I hope that they still have those internal organizations and groups that can support various employees who may be in certain minority groups or certain socioeconomic groups, certain geographical groups, etc. This is such a tough topic for companies who are trying to boost their top line and their bottom line, right? Executives at US listed companies mentioned ESG, DEI, or sustainability on 575 earnings calls from April 1st to June 5th, down 31% from the same period last year. Wow. This is the largest such year-over-year decline and the fifth consecutive quarter. So for 5 quarters, back to back to back to back to back, they have not mentioned DEI, sustainability, ESG as much as they did the prior year. It's been a steady decline. CFOs who often oversee sustainability and diversity efforts are among the executives who have changed tack. CFOs at US listed companies mentioned the topics on 93 calls from April 1st to June 5th, down 30% from prior year period. Wow. What's more, 70% of US chief executives said that their company's ESG programs improve their financial performance, up from 37% a year later, according to a KPMG survey released last October. So that's interesting. So if the goal really is to boost revenue, and boost financial performance, then why not focus on those ESG programs that are helping do that? Is the risk greater than the reward, or is the reward greater than the risk? Still, pressure from some investors and advocacy groups appear to have persuaded companies to pivot their messaging with analysts and investors. I'm gonna mosey on down here. This is also interesting, and these are real life examples of companies. So meal kit provider Blue Apron last mentioned ESG in November 2022. So that was about 7 months ago from the recording of this video, when CEO Linda Findley said it continued to focus on ESG and had recently launched its inaugural ESG report. And if y'all don't know, I've actually worked with ESG, so a little bit. ESG reports are becoming mandatory, I believe. I foresee that in the future, that they will become mandatory for most companies that have something to do with waste, using excessive materials, emitting carbon, using so much energy, not taking the most climate-friendly approaches to their business. I believe they will have to report on ESG. And so, like I said, I don't think ESG is going anywhere, really. So when we increased our starting hourly wages to $18 per hour, we viewed it not only as an investment in our ESG initiatives, but also as simply a wise business decision. Yeah, so ESG is a lot. Other than the environment, there's also the social aspect, of course, where you have social action, or you cater to minority groups, different socioeconomic groups, even like people like veterans, people with special needs and disabilities. That's all a part of ESG. So it's not just a, save the planet kind of initiative. It impacts so many people, even down to fair wages and paying women equally as men. It boils down to that too. So this is basically just saying that the mentioning of ESG and DEI have substantially declined, and investors really hold a lot of power. U.S. institutional investors understand that executives at many of the companies in their portfolios are keeping quiet about their sustainability initiatives. Many large asset managers are in the same bind, and they too are choosing their words more carefully. Yeah, so you would think that wanting to focus on ESG initiatives and DEI initiatives would be, something that is not frowned upon, but something that is praised and admired and, actually, how can I say it? Adored or or cherished or looked upon favorably, but it turns out that's not what companies think. They must be getting some kind of tips from investors, from third-party groups who perform research analysis or market analysis on how consumers view their company and view ESG and view DEI. So are these just short-term trends, or are DE&I, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and environmental, social, and governance initiatives, are they just short-term? Were they just for the 2020 incidents that happened, or do they really have a long-term chance at affecting companies? Do customers really care? Do employees really care? You let me know in the comments. I'm sure that you work for a company, so let me know if your company did not focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, or did not focus on environmental, social, and governance initiatives. Would you still want to work there? Would you still care? Do you really care that they do or don't? Let me know. But as always, stay blessed and stay boss C.